Welcome to a new episode of Dakota Boys Talk Movies. We are talking DC this time. Last episode, we talked about Marvel. We looked at just the state of Marvel, the state Marvel has been in, likes, dislikes we had, worries we had, all that. And so we're going to do something a little similar today, although, as any of you know, have listened to any of our episodes, even though it's going to be essentially a similar episode to the last, our rabbit trails, will, I'm sure, just take us in a lot of different directions as we bring up different things we may get impassioned about in different ways. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at DC. So DC, we've had Dakota. Now, I kind of about fell out of my chair when I saw this recently. That was it. That Aquaman movie was the 15th installment in the DCEU. 15?
What?
Like, I was trying to wrap my head around that there's been 15 movies since the start of with starting with Man of Steel. But it's like, well, I guess so. I guess that's got to be about right, huh?
That can't be right. What? Okay, now I got to think. Are they Okay,
I know I'm not crazy. I know
there's one Superman movie, 0 Batman movies.
Maybe they're counting like the Batman and some of those, and that's why. Because it's like, how do you get 15? So okay, here it is, 15. It's 16 if you count both versions of the Justice League.
We're only counting one of those.
so it's 15.
Yeah.
The 15th and final film was Aquaman in the it was the last Lost Kingdom. So here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. Here they are. So we had. Here's the list you're supposed to watch. Here's the list to watch them in order, I guess. So this will be all of them, not in the order that they came out in. But Wonder Woman 1984, Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Suicide Squad, Justice League, Aquaman, Shazam, Birds of Prey, The Suicide Squad, Black Adam, Shazam: Fury of the Gods, The Flash, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Isn't it crazy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You kind of forget that it is 15.
Yeah, those Shazam movies never really felt like they were part of the franchise as a whole, though.
Well, and what's funny is they have the more cameos than some of the other ones.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing for me that when I think about it is like you kind of forget how both of the suicides. I think I'm having a stroke. Both of the Suicide Squad movies, you kind of forget those are part of this because this isn't even counting Joker. And ones like that are DC, but they're not. They're considered what did they officially call them now? Elseworlds movies.
Yeah, the Batman, the Joker.
Yeah, and so there's even more when you bring in those Elseworlds ones. So it's crazy though, but yeah, Dakota, how did you just on a whole? How have you felt about these DCU movies? I mean, I know you were a huge fan of Green Lantern before this kicked off. I'm just kidding.
The comics of Green Lantern, Steven.
How dare
you?
Not the Ryan Reynolds movie.
How dare you try to besmirch my name like that?
What out of these were kind of like when Man of Steel came? Where were you at when that came out in 2013 or whatever?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a step in the right direction. I was not a fan of this whole kind of like Clark Kent's kind of just meandering through life, working these jobs. That never really, I never was on board with, but something, it was something new.
Sure.
They were trying something new. They were taking a fresh approach to it. And story-wise, it did kind of make sense. Like, that's how he winds up to find the Kryptonian ship at the beginning.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I just...
I remember enjoying how it showed a little bit of an interesting look at like how it kind of started out on Krypton. It almost felt like Snyder would have liked to have lingered there more. It's kind of what it felt like. Just because he seemed to flesh out Krypton a lot more than even Donner. I mean, Donner spent time in Krypton, but Krypton, it felt like a Krypton in those Donner movies, or in that Donner movie, I should say, felt like a strange room of mirrors. I don't know how to explain. Like, it didn't feel like a actual place so much, whereas this kind of made it like seem like more of an actual place. Maybe it's still confusing.
Yeah.
It's still confusing because it's like, what do they breathe? You know, because it didn't feel like there was an atmosphere. Like, what do they eat? You know, you're still trying to understand that, but it still seemed like more of a world, which was kind of cool. But yeah. So okay, so then we get past that, and then what was the next one that came out? BVS.
Yeah, it was Batman v
Which
Superman.
is crazy. That's crazy. They just went right into Batman vs Superman when you had like there was no anchor in anything. It's like, you know, I think they originally were going to do a Man of Steel 2 next, right? And what happened?
Oh
there?
yeah. I think the part of it was they were trying to play catch up with Marvel. Like, okay, you gotta roll out the heroes. Hurry up and roll out the heroes.
They want to get them assembled as quick as possible.
Yeah, rather than trying to work on each character's maybe like a movie with a backstory, filled in where they came from, how they got their powers. Nope, they kind of just wanted to roll everything out right away.
That's what was always funny to me about the DCEU is that it felt like they were trying to play catch up, but at the same time took forever to release the next. Like, there's years between Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984. The Flash movie was teased for a decade. It just was like, you know, Man of Steel 2, even though it didn't come out next, they just kept dangling it like a carrot for a while. And it's just like, it's like, it seemed like they were on one hand, they were like rushing. And then on the other hand, it was like, if you're rushing, why is it taking you 6 years to release sequels?
Yeah. Zack Snyder has come out and said that he didn't want to do Batman v Superman. He had wanted to do a follow-up to Man of Steel.
That makes sense.
And they kind of just coaxed him along like, okay, you'll get to do that, but first you got to do this. And I don't think he was as much of the quote-unquote architect of everything as people just make him out to be. There was like a lot of rumors that he had a lot of input on that very first Suicide Squad movie, and he, of course, says, no, I was just an executive producer. The director of that movie was the one really making all the shots, or calling all the shots, because he was originally accused of being the person that crafted the Joker, you know, with the grill and all the tattoos, and casting Jared Leto. Supposedly that was all him, but he may not have even had a hand in any of that.
Yeah, you're right, because I do remember when the photo surfaced of that Joker, it was like, you're right. Nobody was blaming David Ayer. Everything was like, Zack Snyder did this, even though, yeah, he was only an executive producer, which a lot of people don't realize this because when they put executive in front of the name, it sounds like you have more power, but really the producers, the ones who are just producers, are the ones who kind of have more say in the actual part of the movie. An executive producer just means you put more, you're kind of more of it's more of a title with maybe a little more money attached, kind of things like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he probably truly didn't have as much say as people thought. And so, yeah, who is to blame for the Suicide Squad? We got to blame somebody. I'm just kidding. Yeah, and so it is kind of a funny thing. I think the issue is with how they're building this too, is that even though Zack Snyder wasn't the creative force of driving it all, he was the one who kind of started off, and I just don't know if he's the guy who his style is the one you want to build a whole universe from, because it's a very specific style. It's a very specific way he tells stories.
I'd be okay with him directing a movie as long as he personally didn't, kind of oversee the story or write it, because I think he's a strong execution guy. He's not the guy that, with the pen and the paper, coming up with ideas. He's not the idea guy. He's more of an execution type guy.
Well, what about Sucker Punch?
Wow. Did you not just hear me?
I wish you could see his face.
Did you not hear me? He had way too much input on that movie.
Sometimes I wonder, is he a guy who'd be a better director of photography? Like the guy who, he's the one who figures out where to put the camera. Because sometimes I'm like, every time I see a movie that he directs, I'm like, I don't know if I like his movies, honestly. But sometimes I like where he points the camera.
I think he'd probably be a better, they have those the people that choreograph the action scenes.
Oh, okay.
And kind of like storyboard them. I feel like he'd be one of those, but obviously that'd be a huge step down from director to...
Definitely at this point, be a huge step down.
Yeah. Man, the DCEU, talk about peaks and valleys, am I right?
In deep valleys, and then pretty decent peaks, because I mean, I don't think, especially after Dawn of Justice and that movie kind of being really middling, that anybody expected Wonder Woman to kind of take off like it did. That movie just, it wasn't The Dark Knight, it wasn't making Dark Knight money, but it left an impression. And really, obviously, put Gal Gadot on the map as a movie star. But where do you land on Wonder Woman?
I really liked the first one. I thought it was incredibly well made.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It just was that was one where who would have thought that would be the one?
Yeah,
that would just be the big, probably the peak of the DCEU.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, because the other one you could say was the peak in terms of popularity would probably be The Suicide Squad from 2021, but that didn't quite make the money, I don't think, just for different reasons.
Yeah.
One being a hard R, but also just the timing of when it was released.
Yeah. I don't know. I suppose it really depends on how you feel about Aquaman, though.
That's true, because that first Aquaman movie was, what, a $700 million box office? I think it made $700 million or more.
No, it was over $1 billion.
Yeah, probably worldwide. Worldwide, that's true. It did probably go over. That's true. I guess if you want to talk about success with audiences, it's probably your two peaks as far as money are probably Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and then as far as probably just the ones that people kind of seem to still like the most are probably Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and then The Suicide Squad, which wasn't quite as financially of a hit.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's Birds of Prey. I don't know. It's weird. Isn't it weird how when that one came out, it seemed like that was going to be the one that they were like, this is going to be a surprise hit. This is going to be the one people are going to love to go back and rewatch. And it's like you kind of forget about it until you read through a list of DCU movies. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot there was that Birds of Prey movie.
I feel like that movie was probably too divisive. Way too divisive to ever kind of been a hit, because some people accused it of being misandrist. Just the kind of overall style I could see turning off a lot of people. Like Harley Quinn was in these weird everyone was in this kind of weird outfits.
Yeah.
Huntress was just they didn't even attempt to have her in a comic accurate costume.
I think too, one of the initially divisive things with just people too was that initially it was called Birds of Prey, and then it became Birds of Prey and the Wondrous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, or whatever that thing is. And I think a lot of people, that kind of put them off because they would have liked to have just seen a straight up Birds of Prey movie.
Yeah.
and not one that kind of got overtaken by Harley Quinn. But I think the studio probably was like, we got to put Harley Quinn / Margot Robbie into this thing. So I don't know, where were you at with that? Would you have rather just had a straight up Birds of Prey movie, or were you okay with the whole Harley Quinn?
Well, I was okay with it because they were supposed to follow this up with the Gotham City Sirens, and that was Harley Quinn,
sure.
Poison Ivy, and I believe Catwoman, which just on that premise alone, I'd go see that movie. But had it been more of the first one where it was just, man, there was a lot of interesting choices made, and I don't think they were decent choices. It's just I would have preferred something that harkened a little bit closer to the comics. Although, to be fair, when I did see this, I just treated it like a action movie, just like another action movie, like Commando, something like that. So, in that regards, it was entertaining.
Sure. Yeah, and then, of course, the other actress that, well, she was in a Wolf of Wall Street, but then then Suicide Squad just kind of cemented her as kind of the next It Girl. Would be Margot Robbie, kind of really shot to fame in the course of this time, too. And so it's interesting just because of over these years to see some of these people that have kind of come out of this, and then the ones that you kind of forget were part of the DCEU. Like, I'm sitting here just remembering how Ewan McGregor was in Birds of Prey. Like, you kind of forget he was even in a DC movie in this time period too. And I think the other thing, like when we talked about Marvel, was how through this time, how many different heads were there of Warner Brothers calling the shots on these things. I know for the first part, like, who was in charge when Man of Steel came out? Because it wasn't Walter Hamada yet, right?
No, I forget who kind of the driving force was behind it at the time there. But there was a lot of shuffling going on.
Yeah, and so you essentially, for sure, had 3 different studio heads who probably would have more or less brought in their own board of directors of sorts, changing how they did things. Now, it seems like the one who had the biggest say in all this, because his name, I think, was even on the credits of The Flash, wasn't it, Dakota? Walter Hamada?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he still was attached to something, even though he hasn't been the head for a few years now, his name was still attached to some of these just for being the creative. Well, I don't know if you want to call him creative, but the studio executive.
Interestingly, he was a horror movie. He was kind of behind some of the bigger horror movies at Warner Brothers.
Oh, like Conjuring type stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, he was behind The Conjuring, but very famously / infamously, he was behind the 2 It movies.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
First one was $1 billion winner for Warner Brothers, and then they bloated the budget, gave the director creative control on the second one, and that ended up being, well, let's be real here, not as entertaining as the first one.
Now, this director that got this bloated budget was Andy Muschietti, who also ended up having a very bloated budget happen to him, as he was the final director who finally made the Flash movie, which, if any of you have seen that, is a big hot mess. In fact, I've even heard the word ghoulish used for talking about the Flash movie, because if you know about one particular scene in that movie, it is a little ghoulish, like what they do. I don't know, Dakota. But wasn't that movie like famously like $300 million they practically spent on that movie? It's like they were never going to make their money back. It's like it's like Indiana Jones. That new Indiana Jones. It's like, you're never going to make your money back with how much you just threw at this thing.
Yeah, and then, oh man, they waited too long to release it. Had they released it once they were done with it, like they originally should have, it probably would have been able to avoid all the compare and contrast to Spider-Man No Way Home.
Oh yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, because man,
it was hard to not compare it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, right after they had just finished this film, Ezra Miller was still in good standing with the world. He had
As
yet,
far as we all knew.
he had yet to lose his mind completely and
Yeah.
start going on all these crazy, crazy tangents that he then became known for.
Yeah, is he okay? Where is he?
I have no idea.
I hope that guy gets the help he needs.
Yeah.
He needs some help. I mean, we all need help at times, but he definitely needs some help.
He needs more help
Yeah.
and possibly stay in a hospital for a while.
As Norman Bates said, we all go a little mad sometimes. Anyway, yeah, and so when we talked about Marvel, it seemed like there's a few issues with Marvel. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of you get the word from above and what you got to do, and then there's just some decision making on who you put in charge of this thing, who you decide to have write these things. Now, it seems like the valleys of the DCU are a lot deeper and worse than the peaks. And what do you think caused some of that? Do you think it like it's hard to understand a little bit the DCU because it feels like they were trying to put people in who cared about these things. You know, like James Wan seemed excited about Aquaman and doing Aquaman. And those, I mean, like we talked about, the first one was a hit, but it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't a cultural impact or anything. And then if you've seen the sequel, it's pretty forgettable. And then, you know, and then you have the Shazam movies where it's like, again, it feels like the guy they had direct those movies was excited and passionate about it. But it's like they just didn't hit. They were fine. In fact, I would say the second Shazam is a fine movie. You have Black Adam, where The Rock was like beyond passionate about that character, and it failed miserably. And so it's like, so it seems like they're putting people, you know, I talked about with Marvel, I said it seems like sometimes Marvel, the issue is they're putting people in because they had some sort of hit or they have some sort of spicy screenplays they've written, and we want to bring that spiciness to the MCU or whatever. But it seems like with DC, they were putting in people who seemed like they were passionate, and they were just failing miserably. So it's like, so I don't know, what is the answer? What happened at DC on the DC side, Dakota?
Oh, I feel I have no idea. I just
Like, is it the test screenings? Is it the board director saying you got to cut this, you got to add that after they've made maybe what? I don't know. It's a mystery. So, because then when you see some of these what they call Elseworlds movies, like Joker, the Batman, those were the hits. Those were the legitimate hits that people are still talking about. And so, does that mean maybe a little bit of the secret sauce is standalone movies? Was DC getting caught up in putting Superman in here, and you know, was it just too much of a jumbled mess?
Oh, kind of going back to what I said earlier, but I feel like corporate wise, there was just too much shuffling going on. Very famously, or is it infamously? Probably infamously.
Infamous.
For some reason, Jeff Johns wanted to write the scripts of all the movies that he was greenlighting under him. Like he wrote the script for Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah, because they brought him in to kind of be the movie guy, right?
Yeah, well, he had taken over executive kind of a leadership role at Warner Brothers, and he was trying to steer the movies in a certain direction. Like he kept trying to shove a Batman Year 2 script on Ben Affleck because he was supposed to be making a solo Batman movie.
Oh, right.
And he finally just said, I don't want to do this. And they were like, all right, you're done. And then they brought on Matt Reeves, and he's like, well, I want to do this, but I want to do my own version of this. I don't want it tied to anything previously. So that's how we got the Batman.
Okay.
And yeah, around this same time, the Flash would have been getting worked on. Aquaman had I don't know how many delays. I think it was Jason Momoa had hurt himself, so it got delayed a little bit.
Sure.
And then there was another shakeup at Warner Brothers, and this time they fired Jeff Johns, so his script had to be completely overhauled.
Yeah, because explain like Jeff Johns. Explain where he fits into all this too, if people don't know, because he was always a guy who wanted to be involved in movies, but he also was a comic book writer for a lot of years too, right?
Yeah, originally he was interestingly enough, he was an assistant for Richard Donner back in the day.
Oh, right. That's right. You did tell me that one time.
Yeah, and the two of them had I don't know if they had kind of kept being friends, but they had actually written a couple comics together, Superman comics.
Right.
One was called Superman the Last Son, which brought back General Zod, the Phantom Zone, all kind of the classic tropes from the Richard Donner movies they had brought back into the comics. And then they had written a story together called Bizarro World, which was as goofy as you would think it would be, but it kind of had a charm to it.
Well, and didn't you like a run of his Green Lantern?
Oh yeah, his Green Lantern comics were phenomenal. He was writing other good comics too.
Did he do the Three Jokers?
Yes, he did.
Because that was a good story.
Oh
too.
yeah, Infinite Crisis was one of the best comics I think I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
He did Superman and the Legion of Superheroes, which I love that one. He followed that up with the Legion of Three Worlds, which was amazing. And he's just written all these really great comics. So I don't know why he wasn't. And he has such love and reverence and understanding of these characters. I don't know.
And an understanding of movie making, too, which is why you think it would be the perfect mix.
I don't know how, when it came time for him to actually start producing these movies, he was all thumbs. And it sounds like he was just kind of hard to get along with.
Oh, okay.
Which is why Ben Affleck just said, screw this, I'm done, and had to be coaxed back. And then coaxed back again. And
then coaxed back again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... What a deal. What a deal. Because, you're right. There were just these weird decisions made sometimes that seem like a lot of times came from above. Because, I mean... Then you have things like, and it's the one is tragic. Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide, correct? I guess I don't want to say something that isn't true, but I think that's what it was.
Unfortunately.
And it was when he was doing, I think he was mostly on post-production. I think there was a little bit of filming left.
Yeah.
For Justice League. And good for him. He went to go, deal with family stuff and mourn his daughter, and that's what he should do. And his wife is his producing partner, and so that took them, and so not only do you lose your director, but you lose one of the producers on that too. In the midst of that, being that his wife is producing partner, and then we all know about the whole. Anyone who has a familiarity with the Justice League knows about the whole catastrophe that was that once Joss Whedon came in. I think what reminded me of that is you're talking about not getting along with, because it just seemed like that was one big hot mess of Joss Whedon seemingly getting picked by Zack Snyder to be the one who came in. Isn't that what the story was? I don't know how true that was. But then Whedon kind of having an ego trip in it all.
Yeah, I don't think Zack Snyder had anything to do with choosing who it was that was taking over for him, but I think the general consensus was, hey, this is the guy that kickstarted the Avengers.
Yeah.
Maybe he can work his magic on Justice League. And you look at the movie and it's like, wow, they reshot scenes and added really terrible jokes in them
Yeah.
and just like really, really terrible dialogue choices.
And just, I remember the most puzzling thing to me was watching that movie and being like, what happened to Cyborg? Like, it's like almost like he's almost not involved in the movie.
yeah.
And then there was kind of this, I don't know, some strange choices with the Flash and just a lot of things. And part of it was this, there was a few things that happened was the movie had to like come in at exactly 2 hours. It was like all these, so they had to like, it's just kind of a hacked up mess. So, and everything went wrong. But then of course we all, again, if those of you familiar with this world know about the famous release the Snyder cut thing that happened. Then I think it was a mixture of two things. I think it was nothing happening during the pandemic and HBO trying to get their streaming platform to have some buzz. And so it's kind of like, well, hey, what if we let Zack Snyder come in? We'll throw some more money his way and play the gamble that it'll help people come to our streaming service. That's what I'm guessing it had to have been a streaming service business. Because why else do you let him do this?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't paid for it. He
right. They gave him money to do the
Yeah.
movie, but yeah, he didn't.
Apparently he had in his backyard of all places, he had set up a green screen and he filmed a scene that wasn't in the movie. Or actually, it kind of was because it was really supposed to be Jon Stewart Green Lantern that showed up at the end, not Martian Manhunter. But yeah, there's a clip online of what it would have looked like
being if it was Green Lantern instead.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, but yeah, just I mean, we enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, we have an episode. We have an episode on it where it was, and part of it was just like the original Justice League was just so frustrating that it was nice to at least see, like, well, I don't even know. And that's the other tricky part about this is like, this wasn't, they act like this was his original vision, but I think he also had time to learn from his mistakes and change some things too. But it was crazy how different of a movie it was. Like it had initially some of the same beats and then was just drastically different.
Yeah, Steppenwolf was completely different. Cyborg actually had a story in the movie.
Yeah, like a full story. Like he was practically a lead, and that's what was interesting.
The Flash actually knew how to use his powers and abilities.
Yep.
And yeah, I think the only weak part is Jason Momoa.
Yeah,
He's kind of just there.
Yeah, and I told Dakota this earlier that when Jason Momoa, I feel like he's the weakest part in every movie he's in. You know, like in especially like in the new Aquaman movie, The Lost Kingdom. He's kind of the most distracting one there, where it's like, man, this I think this movie would be helped if you weren't here. Like when Patrick Wilson enters the movie, the guy who plays his brother, it's such a breath of fresh. Patrick Wilson is a national treasure. That guy just like, I don't know what it is. I don't know. It just, when he comes in to a movie, it's just like, we're all good. You know, we're good. Like when he plays him and Vera Farmiga, they play the Warrens in those Conjuring movies, and it's like, those aren't the greatest movies in the world, you know, or whatever. But man, you know, and those Insidious movies, he's good. He's a good actor.
Oh yeah.
And so it's not good because then I just feel like he just kept stealing the spotlight from Jason Momoa, who is a bigger presence, but just not the better presence. It's kind of mean, but
you know something? I think it boils down to Jason Momoa is just kind of being Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
And you know, it'd be like if you know, like Arnold in some of his movies.
Yeah.
He's kind of just being himself.
Yeah, but a lot of times Arnold made it work. Like even in Jingle All the Way, it's kind of endearing. Whereas Momoa, I don't know. It's just like, and then I don't even care if I spoil it. So the end of Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom, he's talking to the UN, about the underwater people, the Atlanteans. They've revealed themselves to the world. They want to work together with the world to make it all a better place and help things. And he's like addressing them, and he's being all formal. And it was kind of shocking to me. I'm like, this is crazy to see him be such a diplomatic figure. And then it felt like the movie was supposed to end, but they left the camera going and left the blooper in the movie, is what it feels like. Where Jason Momoa tries to do like this, like, I am Iron Man moment, like Robert Downey Jr. did at the end of Iron Man, and it's just, it falls so flat and is so stupid. Like, it just sounds like when you watch the scene, it looks like they had to like mute the behind the scenes people who were probably laughing because it just felt like a blooper. How he just like does this whole diplomatic scene and then just does his stupid yell that he always does and drops the microphone like literally. And I'm like, this is just so. It's like The Rock in a lot of his movies where it's just like, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they have big muscles. There's a lot of guys who are jacked who are good in roles. It's just that those two guys are so distracting in movies they're in because they're just always kind of just being themselves to a degree.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be real here. There was a lot of choices on what was comedic, or they decided to put all these little comedic touches in that last Aquaman movie. I don't think a lot of them landed the way they had hoped they would.
Yeah, you know what the ones that landed were? The ones that Patrick Wilson did.
Like Aquaman referring to Ocean Master as Loki. Like, what is that? It was Jason Momoa getting peed on.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they had him. It's like, yeah, this was funny when Leonard Nimoy did it back in the 80s with 3 Men and a Baby, where they had him get peed on like 3 different times. It's like, yep, baby's peeing on him.
Tricking Patrick Wilson's character into eating a cockroach. Just, yeah.
Well, that scene was weird to me too, because I'm like, was he tricking him into the cockroach? Because then Patrick Wilson eats it and he's like, yeah, good, right? And then at the end, Patrick Wilson puts one on his hamburger because he actually likes cockroaches. Which that was just goofy too, because like, why was there a cockroach walking across this restaurant table? Whatever. You go with it, and you know why you go with it in that moment? Because Patrick Wilson made it believable.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You know, there is one aspect of that film that I feel like should have been probably touched on more. The fact that his character was raised with this idea that one day this usurper was going to come pounding on his door,
yeah,
demanding everything. Like, turn over the kingdom to me.
Yeah,
and it's just like
I thought you were gonna say, the absence of Willem Dafoe.
Oh, that
because
too.
It's like they kind of just one line, like, yeah, and he died in the plague. It's like, wait, what?
I mean, you could say Dolph Lundgren trying to kind of being demoted to comedic relief.
Speaking of distracting, first off, what is his accent?
I don't know.
I could not. I almost had to turn on closed captioning with that guy. Oh man, yeah, he was, and then the other thing that's interesting is that Amber Heard's in it a lot more than you think. So, because of the whole, whoa, she's not going to be in it because of the whole, whatever, pooping on the bed stuff. Anyway.
You know who should have been in the film more?
Who's that?
I don't even know the character's name, but the what do they call him? He's the king of the...
Oh, the crab who John Rhys Davies voices?
Yes.
Yeah.
He should have been in the film a lot more.
Yeah, the king crab guy.
He should have been like, I don't know. He should have been in like 30% of this movie.
They tried to make him the Gimli of this movie, which since it was John Rhys Davies, I guess. Yeah, Yeah, and then the other thing I want to touch on too is, well, I think you kind of said this, that the Shazam movies don't feel like they're even part of this world, even though they do have, each one has some cameos to a degree in different ways. Or in the first one, it's kind of more like he has the friend that fanboys out and has batarangs from Batman and that he's collected and things like this. But
Superman showed up at the end, technically.
a Superman figure showed up at the end, yes. But for weirdly, those Shazam movies are a couple of the ones that I don't mind as much in this DCEU.
See, the second one for me just felt so flat. I couldn't get into it. I'm kind of over just putting actors in like costumes from ancient times and being like, this is the god of wine. It's like, come on, man, do something. Do something original. I'm so over this.
Like throwing Russell Crowe into Thor.
Yeah, it's like I'm so over all this. Like, do something original. Don't just put an actor in a costume and be like, this is the god of,
Well, they did do something original. Rachel Zegler was in high school student clothes for a while before she was in her put her in a god of toga thing. But Shazam, though, is kind of hard, though, because isn't everybody in Shazam world kind of just toga-wearing people?
What do you mean, everybody?
Well, I mean, like, at least in this movie universe, it's like they're all all these gods are kind of from this toga-wearing kind of reality. Like the wizard Shazam and the gods that they show are they are just kind of all toga-wearing people.
Yeah, but like Lucy Liu's character is supposed to be like the goddess of chaos. It's like, man, do something with that. Maybe have maybe if she's in a certain area for too long, like riots just break out and
sure.
Yeah, pandemonium ensues and law and order starts to break down and I don't know, something.
That was the weirdest thing about that second Shazam movie was that those three goddesses like seemingly were all there for the same reason, but then quickly all kind of turned on each other. That was like the weirdest part for me. I couldn't quite understand the wholeness of the motivations. I mean, I guess you kind of understood. What was the one Rachel Zegler was playing?
I don't even remember anymore.
Anyway, she's the one where like, okay, maybe you kind of understand her motivation the most, but then the other two was like weird how all of a sudden they weren't on the same page anymore, and it's like, where did that come from? I guess I guess maybe they just had different thoughts on how to handle the situations, but yeah, I think part of why those ones I just clicked with me better was just because I kind of liked the family dynamics that they played with in those movies. I thought that was kind of fun. Just how he has this kind of goofy group of foster family people that he lives with. And it was kind of fun to see how they played with that. And it was kind of fun just how they kind of played with his foster brother / Adam Brody character. It was just, I don't know, it was kind of fun to see some of those dynamics and stuff. The weird thing is that there was so much talk about it after the first movie that I thought maybe they would try to fix that in the second movie, and they really didn't that much. And it was the fact that Zachary Levi and the kid who played Billy Batson seem like two different people, even though they're supposed to be the same person.
Yeah.
That was kind of a critique after the first movie, and so I'm like, oh, they'll probably try to fix it in the second movie, kind of have more of a... You'll see more similarities and dissimilarities. Kind of like how the Jumanji movies did a really good job at you feeling like, yeah, there really is a teenage girl inside Jack Black's mind. Like those movies did a pretty good job at that. Whereas I feel like I don't know what it was. If maybe Zachary Levi should have more say. And so it's like maybe you follow Zachary Levi's lead, and they should have told that kid like, hey, could you try to act a little bit more how he's acting, but they really didn't worry about it, didn't seem like. Because I feel like the other Shazam actors were better at that. That it worked better. Just it was unfortunate that with the main two it didn't.
Yeah.
And so, but the other thing that's funny too is how Fury of the Gods, by the time that movie came out, they kind of knew it was essentially the end of this era,
Yeah.
and they still left in that hanging story thread of the villain from the first movie and the Mr. Mind caterpillar. It's like, why do you leave that in like you're going to go anywhere with this?
Maybe they made the conscious decision. It'd be weird if we didn't address it.
Maybe.
Like some people would have been like, hey, well, what happened to them? And I feel like that's where that line, like, where Mr. Mind says something of, oh, well, you know, things take time. And
Yeah.
had Shazam's Fury of the Gods been a hit, maybe they were kind of banking on we could get another one and just wrap up the trilogy, tie a nice little bow on it.
Maybe. That could be, because I know after it came out, Zachary Levi did his darndest to make people care about this movie.
Yeah, I mean,
So maybe that was kind of the hope.
everything was up in the air at the time, so you didn't know.
Yeah.
You didn't even know at the time if Henry Cavill was going to be recast or if they were going to keep going with him. And then all of a sudden, the things kind of just fell where they're at currently, where we're going into a brand new DC universe.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like, so now we're James Gunn, who was brought over when Disney kind of seemed like they weren't going to work with him anymore. And DC, Warner Brothers snatched him up pretty quick. And was it his idea to do the Suicide Squad? They asked him, what do you want to do? And he said, the Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
And like I said, it wasn't one of their biggest box office successes, but it was still a success. I still think it made money. It just wasn't as bananas big as some had been. And I think just the fact that critics and audiences both agreed that it was pretty good. And then it weirdly got a TV show spinoff that I don't think anybody would have predicted would have been a thing. Probably a thing that only James Gunn could will to happen in Peacemaker, that I think is still going to get a second season.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to be, I think he said in 2026 we can expect the season 2, which bums me out because I really like Peacemaker.
Maybe John Cena will find his clothes by then, since he didn't wear them to the Oscars. And
Are you talking about when that envelope just floated across the state? I'm kidding.
yeah, exactly. I couldn't see him. Didn't see anything. Yeah, and so
You know what? R.I.P. DCEU. We hardly knew you is what we're trying to say.
what's crazy is there were 15 movies, and yet it just... I think the reason it doesn't feel that way is because so many of them were just kind of duds. Sadly.
I feel like I said, so much wasted potential.
Yeah.
We'll never get the Batman movie that Ben Affleck was envisioning, which was basically going to be him taking on all his villains in one movie, where it was basically going to be just giant action set piece after action set piece, which
it would have been kind of like a One Bad Night in Gotham type of movie.
Yeah, where I don't know, I don't think they ever revealed why, but Deathstroke was gunning for Batman, and he was going to Gotham to kind of take him out, and Deathstroke was gonna be utilizing all his villains. There was talk of bringing back Will Smith's Deadshot,
Oh, okay.
Killer Croc, all these villains. They hired an actress to play Catwoman. You probably forgot about that, didn't you?
I didn't know there was a Catwoman. So I couldn't forget what I didn't know, I guess.
Oh wow.
But yeah, there's a thread that didn't go anywhere. Was that post-credit scene of Joe Manganiello, however you say his name, how he was Deathstroke in a post-credit scene, and then in the Zack Snyder's Justice League, he shows up again.
Her name is Isa Gonzalez. She was in Baby Driver, and she had a very small part in Godzilla vs Kong.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, she cut her hair short. This is right after Baby Driver. She cut her hair short, and
Well, they were that close to.
yeah. I think the plan was she was going to show up in the Batman movie, which was titled The Batman.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, so a lot of wasted potential. Kind of sucks. We never got to see a Man of Steel 2. I feel like had they been given the chance, maybe we would have seen villains other than Lex Luthor.
Yeah, that was even more than Affleck. I feel like because I mean, I don't know. I feel like the Affleck thing always felt doomed after BVS, but Cavill was the one who really felt like he got the biggest shaft in all this. Because I mean, he got a full movie that actually did pretty well. I mean, people liked Man of Steel; it did all right. Hans Zimmer did some good music for it, all that jazz, and it's just crazy that they never did a Man of Steel 2. and that it just like, yeah, and then he just kind of had like a weird death resurrection arc in the Justice League movies. And so it just, I don't know. Yeah, that was almost the most heartbreaking thing of this, is that I didn't mind him as Superman and would like to have seen another Superman adventure with him before it was over.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at now. There's that we didn't even talk about Blue Beetle. I didn't even see it. Did you see that?
Technically, that's part of the upcoming universe because that character might come back.
Oh well, that's good because it seems like that kid is excited about it, and it seemed like that movie maybe didn't bank a bunch, but it seems like people generally liked it who saw it.
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't seen it either.
Yeah. But it just, yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see. And then the other thing too, I think with this DC thing that's a little bit different than MCU is that they do have these Elseworld properties. Like the Batman is getting a sequel in 2026 now, and then is it later this year is the second Joker movie?
Yeah, allegedly, but like I said, we haven't seen anything on it. So.
Yeah, and of course, many of you probably know Lady Gaga is going to be some version of Dr. Harleen Quinn, who I'm guessing is going to potentially turn Harlequin in this movie.
What if it's all in his head though, and she's not actually real, or
she's real, but he's seeing her differently in his head.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much of because there's this whole tease that it could even be a musical of sorts. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't know. We talked about the Joker movie, or Joker, I think it's just called. We had a review of that, and I remember thinking you definitely couldn't knock it as being a bad movie. It was just so differently bizarre and dark that you couldn't knock it for what it was. It was just definitely not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
I don't know. My biggest issue with it is I don't see that Joker ever being able to take on a Batman of any.
Well, and that's the beauty.
Any sort of caliber.
That's the beauty of this whole Elseworlds thing. The thing that MCU needs to do too, because the most distracting thing in movies is why isn't this person there? Or if this is that big of a deal, you'd think this person would show up. It's funny how in Spider-Man: Homecoming, Iron Man is able to show up for just some. I hate to say this because people were on it, but he shows up for this little ferry and helps Spider-Man deal with this ferry situation that splits apart, which isn't a world-shattering event. But then in other movies, when the Avengers don't show up, they're like, well, the Avengers only show up when it's like a world-altering situation. And it's like, well, that's convenient that Iron Man can show up in this situation because I guess he's still mentoring Peter. And so I'm kind of okay with them playing with, because I mean there's comics that that play with things where it's like you don't worry about if this hero's there or that hero's there or this villain's there. And so if Joker wants to be its own thing, that's fine. Good, be your own thing. It's kind of like the Batman too. It's like the Batman movie, it's like, yeah, if there's never any Green Lantern that shows up or anything, fine. There can be, I think what these movie studios need to learn, but I think they have trouble doing because they don't want people to compare and have competitions over, is that it would be nice if they would just let there be a Batman in these movies and then still have there be a Batman doing these things. But it doesn't seem like they want to do that because it would almost be like they're competing with themselves, I suppose.
Yeah. You know, I'm just gonna inject real quick. Oh, I think one of the biggest issues I have with the Batman is it's like Matt Reeves is trying to outdo Christopher Nolan. Like, we already saw this ultra realistic, stripped down version of Batman. Can we maybe get a Batman that's, like he has to take on villains like the Mad Hatter, or he has to deal with Killer Croc.
But that's what I'm saying. I hope they do that. But I just wish that they could realize there can be more than one thing. I mean, right now, if you wanted to, you could subscribe to World's Finest comic, Batman comic, Detective Comics, and they all have a different Batman in them, and occasionally a Superman will show up or something that's different. Yeah. And I mean, people are able to differentiate and separate the two. And so it's like, because I know they have a Batman Brave and the Bold movie still planned, and I'm guessing maybe they're going to go that direction with it and have a little different of a taste. But the problem is they got Andy Muschietti attached to that, who's had some Rocky films in the not Rocky the boxer, but like rough films. I mean, he just did The Flash, It Chapter 2, which he said wasn't great. He's kind of not the most steady filmmaker out there right now. And so
I think he needs to lay off the CGI, and he kind of needs to bring his films under 2 hours. I think if he can manage to do that, he'll make pretty good films. But I think he also has like a really weird sense of humor. I think that explains some of It Chapter 2 and The Flash.
Like the weird babies flying off a building part in The Flash.
Yes. I think he made a conscious decision to do that because you couldn't have those be real-looking babies.
Yeah, they were just disgustingly CGI, cartoony babies.
If they were real babies, people would be like, "Oh my God, they actually put kids' lives in danger. These monsters."
Yeah,
but he's like, "No, it's obviously a child. Look at how terrible that looks." Come on.
Yeah, maybe it is like a warped sense of humor.
Or in It Chapter 2, when I forget what's the hypochondriac kid's name. It's like when he's an adult and he hears his mom's voice down the pharmacy and he gets attacked by that hobo and the hobo pukes all over him. It's like, and then for a brief second, Angel of the Morning plays. It's like, in Andy Muschietti's head, he was laughing. He was laughing hysterically at that moment.
Oh my God.
And it's like, what was that? Like, good Lord, did we need any of that?
Yeah, that could be. And so, that being said, do you think he's the best director for the Batman Brave and the Bold?
No.
Which I don't know. That one's still far enough down where that could change. Because so obviously, it's been in the news a lot. Superman Legacy, or is they just calling it Superman now? It sounds like.
Yeah.
Is the first movie coming out, and that's filming, and then they've cast Supergirl, which she was in. She kind of rose to fame from that Game of Thrones spinoff show, House of the Dragon, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, there's starting to be some news, and then there's some other like Elseworldy things that are interesting to me. Like, it sounds like Keanu Reeves might actually get his Constantine 2. Did you hear about this? That they might actually do the sequel?
Yeah, they've been talking about that for a while.
I wonder if that's actually going to happen.
So I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. So they are making a Tron 3 as we speak right now. And
Well, yeah, I don't know if they started yet, but it's supposedly happening.
yeah, they released a teaser picture of one of the characters, but it's
who's directing that?
I have no idea, but might be the director of the last one.
Well, he's a pretty big deal now because of Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah. But no, here's the thing. It's like it's still up in the air about us getting a sequel to this beloved cult film and these trash movies, the Tron movies. Yeah, I'm calling them trash. Yeah. Yep. I went there. Like there's been this long gestating. Oh, yeah, we're going to make another one. We're going to make another one. And there's always been someone like gunning for the next story in this series of terrible movies that like seriously, like there are those people out there who like, well, if there wasn't a Tron, there wouldn't be a Matrix. It's like, yeah, there would. Those are two completely different things.
My biggest hang up with this new Tron movie is Jared Leto's in it. I just think you got to quit putting that guy into movies. He deserves a little bit of a timeout for his past few movies he's done.
I don't know what you're talking about. Morbius was one of the greatest movies ever.
They put it back into theaters. It was so good.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, and I don't know. So going forward we got this Superman's going to start this off. There's probably obviously a Batman somewhere down the road. Now we'll just talk about what's supposedly going to be more connected. There's supposed to be an Authority movie, Creature Commandos.
They're working on the Creature Commandos animated movie as we talk, and then supposedly there will be a live action.
Okay,
that's why they hired the actors they chose, which
is
is interesting because Frank Grillo is playing Rick Flag Sr. And from what I heard, the characters we saw in the last Suicide Squad are still going to be in this upcoming universe. And it's just like, so Frank Grillo was the dad of this one. And I just like, I don't see it. It's a little bit jarring when you think about it too. It's like, okay, this man sired this son who then got murdered by Peacemaker.
Yeah.
You rat son. I'm still not over that.
Yeah.
Still not over Rick Flag Jr. getting killed.
That I forgot how they're going to do an animated one, but they hired people that they want to be the live action people too. But yeah, I don't know. Are you optimistic at this point about some of these things and where they're going and the direction it's going to be?
Yeah, for the most part, I am.
Seems like Gunn's got some different inspirations for a Superman movie. A little bit of Kingdom Come artwork. And then maybe a little bit of Man of Tomorrow type stuff making its way into it. I don't know. Is that things that so you're excited about all those things and how they're coming together?
I am very cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But I think we better wrap this up because we're hitting over an hour. We don't want to keep you guys too long, but we do appreciate you listening, hearing us ramble on about DC now. Are you cautiously optimistic also about the upcoming DC slate, or are you just like you're just all in because you're just an idealist, you're just ready to go, like you just follow James Gunn to the end? Are you that person, or do you just not even care anymore? We'd love to hear, and you can let us know either if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can do it down in the comments, or you can go over to our Facebook page and put things there. That's where we, we'll put up news with new episodes, things like that. So you can always just leave us anything there. But yeah, we hope you're doing that. We hope you're liking, subscribing, rating, all that stuff. We appreciate it. But thanks for listening to this episode. This is Steven.
This is Dakota.
We'll see you later.